Hello students and welcome to Applications of Systems of Equations, and we are in chapter 6-4, and we are going to be looking at some pretty tough problems. So we only have three, and it's probably going to take me one video per problem. That's what I'm thinking, to just give you opportunity to think and reflect on this problem, each one as we go. And it's a tough one, so you're just going to have to practice and just be aware that there will be some learning curve here, some frustration, and some excitement too when you finally see what's happening here and some higher level thinking problems for us. So the first one I want to talk about, I am actually doing the questions out of the book in the notes so that you have a resource there to look back on as well if you wish to. But I am going to ask that you go through the videos and get all the notes down, because you need to do that. You need to write things and help you remember them, hopefully. So here we go. On page 388, the first type of problem they talk about are problems that are called problems that have a break-even point. And in this particular problem, there is a fashion designer that makes and sells hats. The material for each hat costs $5.50. The hats sell for $12.50 each. The designer spends $1,400 on advertising. How many hats must the designer sell to break even? Well, first of all, let's talk about what we mean when we say break even if you don't understand that. Basically, in financial terms, break even for a company means, I'll write it up here since I've got break even up here. Break even means that expense, I'll just say expense equals income. You see, in order for this person to make these hats, they have to pay for the hat before they sell it. And the materials cost $5.50. And you have to plan how to, there's other expenses involved. And this particular person has $1,400 planned to advertise it, because you want to sell it. So you have to let people know about it. So they've budgeted $1,400. So how many hats must the designer solve to break even? We're going to have to write an equation for those expenses, and then we're going to have to write an equation for the income. Their income is $12.50 per hat. Okay, so that helps us maybe figure out what our variables should be. So I'm going to define the variables like this. Now you need to write this down because I do give you credit just for defining it. We're going to let x equal the number of hats they sell. I'll say number of hats sold. Okay. Then we're going to let y equal, this is a little different, but we're going to let it equal the number of dollars. We'll just do a dollar symbol. Number of dollars of expense or income. Okay, so the main thing there is just to think that, that's dollars. Expenses just means it's income that's going out. Income means it's income that's coming in to you. So what we need to do is we need to write an equation that represents the expenses. Well, I kind of said that already. We chose to let y equal represent the dollars, so we're going to say that y, the total expenses, or the minus dollars, you could think of it as negative dollars to your savings account, if you will. Well, like we said earlier, it costs $5.50 per hat, so that's 5.5 times the number of hats that they sell. Okay, plus there's a one-time fee of $1,400 for advertising right here. So that equation represents the expenses. Now we need another equation to represent the income. Now we want to say, well, how can we show, using the dollars and hats sold, an equation that would represent the money coming in? Well, hopefully you can figure out that that would be the dollars, which is y, is equal to $12.50 times the number of hats they sell. Now I can just say 12.5 because that zero doesn't have to be there. Now we have two equations here. So this question says, we have two equations, one that shows the expenses and one that shows the income. So the question is asking us to find at what point do they break even. Okay, so they're spending this large amount of money to make the hats. So they want to know basically how many hats will they have sold, okay, to have made back all of the money that they made for expenses. So what we want to do is we want to use this equation that we set up here. We want to let the expense equation equal the income equation. In other words, we're going to substitute. This is basically a substitution kind of a problem. We're going to take this and substitute that into there and let them be equal. Okay, so we're going to say the expenses, which is 5.5x plus 1400. We're going to let that equal 12.5 times x. There we have expenses equals income. Now all we have to do is solve this for x, and essentially we will have the solution. Well, since I have 5.5x on one side and 12.5x on the other, and that doesn't have a constant, the smartest thing to do here would be to just subtract 5.5x from both sides. So let's do that. That cancels out right there, and we're end up with 1400 on this side, and that's equal, if we subtract this out right here, we end up with 7x, and we're almost done. We just need to go ahead and solve this. Divide both sides by 7, x equals 200, and that is the solution. 200 hats, all right, so they must sell 200 hats to break even. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, well, you know, I think I could have solved this another way. In this particular problem, you could have, but you need to understand I am testing you, I am checking you to, or I'm trying to teach you how to apply systems of equations. And because we don't understand calculus yet, we have to keep the problems relatively simple. So the expectation is that you solve these problems using a system of equations. You need to understand that that's kind of the point. Even though most of these problems we do, you could solve other ways because they're really not complicated enough for us to have a full understanding of it, because our knowledge is limited. So the expectation is for you to be able to understand the system of equations and how it applies to this type of a problem as you go through this week's homework. So please keep that in mind, and see me when you have extra questions. I'm going to stop this one and start a new video for problem number 2.